The thing about invisible injuries is that they don't give you anything to point at. Danny Kowalski knew this the way you know the exact weight of a lie you've been carrying so long it started to feel like posture. He knew it standing outside the Darling Harbor venue at 7:43 in the morning, in the only collared shirt he still owned that didn't smell like the inside of a gym bag, watching a man in a wheelchair navigate the ramp with the kind of practiced economy that made Danny feel like he'd shown up to a marathon and forgotten to train. The harbor was doing what Sydney harbors do in February, showing off. Light on the water like someone had scattered a fistful of coins across it and told the sun to aim. Ferries moving, gulls being their useless dramatic selves. The kind of morning that has no interest in your interior condition. Danny had driven 40 minutes from Penrith. He told his wife he was going to a veterans thing. She'd said that's good, love in the voice she used when she meant please, let this be the one that helps. He'd kissed her on the forehead and left before she could see his face. He stood at the base of the ramp and did the thing he'd been doing for 2 years. He counted everyone else's damage. Wheelchair, prosthetic, eye patch, actual eye patch, which he hadn't expected, which made him feel briefly medieval and then immediately ashamed of that thought. 2 men walking with canes. A woman with a service dog the size of a small couch who was wearing a vest that said "Do not pet," and whom Danny desperately wanted to pet. A younger guy, maybe 24, with burns scarring up his left arm that climbed his neck and stopped just below his jaw like it had run out of ambition. Danny had a brain injury. You couldn't see it. It didn't show up clean on most scans anymore. What it showed up as was a personality. Apparently, short fuse, word fog, sleep that arrived like a punishment and left like an insult. What it showed up as was Danny Kowalski standing outside a waterfront venue in his one good shirt, running an internal audit of everyone else's visible suffering so he could confirm what he already knew. He didn't belong in that chair. Not the wheelchair. He didn't use one. He meant the metaphorical chair. The one in the room where the real veterans sat and the real conversations happened and the real recovery began. That chair. A volunteer with a lanyard and the efficient cheerfulness of someone who had already had 2 coffees, handed him a badge and a program and said, "Welcome. We're so glad you're here," and Danny said thanks, and walked inside and found a seat near the back where he could see the door. Old habit. The room was wide and bright and smelled like new carpet and catering trays. Adaptive sports equipment lined one wall, a curling setup, a row of seated volleyball stations, some kind of rowing contraption that looked like it had opinions. Round tables, name cards. Danny found his, table 4. He sat down and put his program on the table and didn't open it. The man next to him had one prosthetic leg and a tattoo on his forearm that read "Still Here" in letters large enough to be read from a moving vehicle. He stuck out his hand without looking up from his phone. "Robbo," he said. "Danny, what you do?" Danny blinked, sorry. Robbo gestured vaguely at Danny's general body. "What's the story?" "Mine's an IED. Hellman, 2011. He said it the way you'd say mine's a chicken parma, completely without theater." "TBI," Danny said. "Training accident, 2022. Robbo looked at him then, not unkindly. "Non-combat." "Non-combat. Right," Robbo went back to his phone. "Well, welcome to the island of misfit toys." Danny laughed. It surprised him. He hadn't laughed before 9 in the morning in a long time. At 8:15, a woman with a lanyard different from the first volunteer's lanyard, more lanyards apparently, indicated more authority, came to their table and said there'd been a small change to the program. A select group would meet with the Duke in a separate room before the main event. More intimate, smaller numbers. 12 names were called. Danny's was one of them. He followed the group through a side corridor and into a room that was smaller and had chairs arranged in a loose circle and a window that looked directly out at the water. and a table with a coffee urn that no one touched because everyone was too busy pretending they weren't nervous to operate a coffee urn. 12 veterans, mixed services, Army, Navy, Air Force, men and women, ages ranging from what Danny estimated was 22 to somewhere in the mid-50s, visible injuries and invisible ones. The woman with the service dog was there. The dog lay immediately on the floor and appeared to fall asleep, which Danny respected enormously. Robbo sat down next to Danny again. Danny hadn't invited this. He also hadn't not invited it. "You been to one of these before?" Robbo asked. "No." "Me neither." Robbo cracked his knuckles. "Heard he's good though. Heard he actually listens." "Who told you that?" "Bloke from the Dusseldorf games. Said Harry sat with him for 40 minutes and never once looked at his phone." Robbo considered this. "That's longer than my ex-wife ever sat with me without looking at her phone, so." Danny almost laughed again. He stopped himself this time, kept his hands flat on his thighs, looked at the door. 12 veterans in a circle of chairs waiting for a prince, and every single one of them performing some version of Fine. And Danny was the only one who knew it because Danny was also performing some version of Fine. And that is the particular X-ray vision that Fine gives you. He looked around the room and did his audit again. Couldn't help it. It was reflexive now. The way checking for exits was reflexive. The young guy with the burn scars was sitting very still with his hands folded. The woman with the service dog was murmuring something to the dog. An older man, Army by the set of him, 50s, silver at the temples, was reading the program with the focused attention of someone who needed somewhere to put his eyes. And Robbo was performing. That was the word for it. Not fake. Robbo wasn't fake. But he was performing Robbo, the loud one. The one with the ready joke and the easy manner and the tattoo that announced itself before he did. The one who made the room feel like everything was fine, because if he was fine, missing leg, and all, then surely everyone else could manage. Danny had seen this before. He'd done this before. Robbo was the best defended person in the room. Danny filed this and sat on it and looked back at the door and waited. No one announced him. That was the first thing. The door just opened, a regular door, opened at regular speed, and Harry walked in the way people walk in when they are not performing walking in. No pause at the threshold, no beat to let the room register him. He came in like he'd been in the corridor thinking about something else, and the thinking was still on his face when he sat down. He sat down, not at the head of any configuration, just in the circle. One of 12 chairs, and he took one of the 12 chairs and he put his forearms on his knees and he looked around the room. He made eye contact before he spoke. That was the second thing. He didn't scan the room. He looked at people, individual people, briefly, one at a time, moving around the circle like he was taking a quiet census of who was actually there versus who had shown up in their body while the rest of them stayed in the car. He got to Danny. Danny looked back. He had the eyes of someone who knew what it was to be in the wrong room and stay anyway. Danny looked away first. "Thanks for making the time," Harry said. His voice was conversational, not projected, not speech voice. The voice you use when you're talking to 12 people in a room and you want all of them to feel like you're talking to one. "I know mornings are hard. I know getting here is sometimes the whole effort." Nobody said anything. "I want to say something before we start," he said. "And I mean this, so bear with me." He paused, not for drama, actually pausing, actually choosing words. Whatever you've been through, however it happened, wherever it happened, whether anyone else can see it or not, you are meant to be in this room. Full stop. No asterisks. The woman with the service dog made a small sound. The dog didn't wake up. Danny's hands, flat on his thighs, pressed down a little harder. No asterisks. He'd never heard it said like that, without the ladder of qualification, Without the implied, but of course combat veterans take precedence, or naturally those with physical injuries have particular challenges. Just no asterisks. Full stop. Like it wasn't even a generous thing to say. Like it was simply accurate. Danny's brain, which had been injured and which still occasionally misfired in ways that ambushed him, chose this moment to inform him that his eyes were doing something embarrassing. He looked at the window. The harbor was still showing off. Harry asked one question. What's the hardest part? Not of the injury itself, but of what came after. Then he went quiet. Completely quiet. Not the quiet of someone waiting to respond. The quiet of someone who has genuinely suspended their own agenda and made space the shape of a real answer. The older army man spoke first. Chronic pain. The way it rewired your patience. The way you became someone your family didn't recognize, and neither did you. He spoke carefully, with the cadence of a man who had rehearsed this, not dishonestly, but protectively. Like he'd figured out the version he could say out loud without it costing him too much. Harry listened, asked one follow-up, didn't redirect. The woman with the service dog, her name was Priya, Danny learned, talked about reintegration. The way civilian life had a rhythm she couldn't find the beat of anymore. She said it with a kind of flat precision that made it clear she'd accepted this as a fact rather than a complaint. Her dog, apparently sensing something, woke up and put its head on her foot without being asked. Harry noticed. He noticed everything, Danny realized. Not with the pointed attention of someone trying to demonstrate that they noticed. Just things registered, filed, returned to gently at the right moment. Then Robbo. Robbo had clearly been waiting. He launched in with the energy of a man who has been the funniest person at every table he's ever sat at and intends to maintain his record. He talked about the leg, the phantom pain, the way he'd named the phantom pain Keith, because Keith was an annoying presence that served no purpose and nobody wanted at the party. The room laughed. Harry laughed genuinely, the whole face involved. Robbo talked about the adaptive sports. The first time he'd been on a hand cycle and gone faster than he'd driven a car in the army and thought, right, okay, maybe. He talked about the Invictus community like it was a country he'd emigrated to. He was good. He was very good. Danny said nothing. He was aware of saying nothing. He was aware of it the way you're aware of a splinter constantly, with a dull, specific discomfort. He had things he could have said. He had the sentences assembled. He just couldn't make his mouth do the thing. Harry had moved through about 8 of the 12. Easy, unhurried, never making anyone feel skipped or pressed. He got to Danny and then didn't. He looked at Danny for one moment, the briefest acknowledgement, and then moved to the man beside him. Danny felt the strangest thing. Relief, and then almost immediately after, something that felt uncomfortably like disappointment. It happened in a gap between stories. Priya had just finished talking about her service dog, whose name, it turned out, was Gerald, which was perfect. And Robbo filled the silence the way Robbo filled all silences, naturally and at volume. Honestly, Robbo said, best thing that happened to me, losing the leg. Beat. I mean, don't get me wrong, Keith is a nightmare, the room smiled. They knew about Keith now, but before, before I was just some bloke, average at everything. Now I'm interesting, he grinned. Takes a catastrophe, apparently. Some of us need the extra motivation. The room laughed. Harry laughed. And then Robbo's face did the thing. 1 second, maybe less. A fracture, something moving underneath the performance like a tremor under good tile. His eyes went somewhere else entirely, somewhere with no address in this room or this city. And his jaw tightened in a way that had nothing to do with humor. And his hand, the one resting on his prosthetic knee, pressed down with a grief so compressed it could have powered something. Then it was gone. Performance back, grin reassembled. But Harry had seen it. Danny had seen it. The room hadn't. Harry didn't call it out. He He didn't say "I noticed that" or "Are you all right" in a way that would have made Robbo have to perform being fine in front of 12 people. He just held it, kept it. Danny watched him keep it, which was its own kind of extraordinary. "Robbo," Harry said in a tone that contained absolutely no agenda, "before we move on, what was it actually like? The first day, not the story you tell, the actual day." Silence. Robbo opened his mouth. "Mate," he said, and then stopped, looked at Harry, registered what he just said. "Sorry, sir, I mean," he stopped again. "Sorry, mate." The room dissolved. Robbo put his face in his hands, not from shame, from the specific agony of making the same mistake twice while trying to correct it. His shoulders were shaking with laughter and something adjacent to it. "Oh, just go," Robbo said, waving a hand. "Just keep going. I'll be mate-ing you all morning at this rate." Harry was laughing. "Mate is fine," he said. "Genuinely, mate is completely fine. With respect, I don't think it is. With respect, I'm telling you it is." "Mate," Robbo said it again, helplessly. And now he was definitely laughing, and it was definitely not only laughing, and nobody in the room was going to say that. Harry waited for the laughter to settle and then said, gently, with nothing performative in it at all, "The first day." Robbo looked at him. The performance was gone. What was underneath it was a man who had been the funniest person in every room for 3 years, because the alternative was being the saddest. And he was very tired, and he was sitting in a room where somebody had asked him a real question, and the asking of it had done something to the lock. "The first day," Robbo said slowly, "I rang my mum." He stopped. "I hadn't rung my mum in 4 years. We weren't, it was complicated. But it was the first thing I did." He looked at his hands. "I don't know why I'm telling you that." "Because it's the true one," Harry said. Robbo nodded once sharply and looked at the window. Nobody spoke for a moment. Danny's hands were pressed so hard against his thighs he could feel his own pulse. Harry didn't turn to Danny. That was the thing. He turned back to the group. He moved the conversation forward with the same steady, unhurried attention. He talked briefly, not performing his own experience but acknowledging it existed, about the particular way that invisible struggles had a weight that visible ones didn't, because visible ones at least gave you the permission of being believed. "There's a specific kind of exhaustion," he said, "that comes from having to prove you're injured before anyone will treat you like you are." He was talking to the room. He was talking to Danny. Danny knew this with the cellular certainty of someone who has been spoken about in the third person for so long that the second person feels like a physical contact. "The people in this room who are carrying something no one can see," Harry continued, still to the group, still not to Danny specifically, still absolutely to Danny, "are not here under false pretenses. They are not taking up space that belongs to someone else. The injury doesn't have to be visible to be real. The struggle doesn't have to be dramatic to be legitimate." Danny's jaw ached. He realized he had been clenching it. He realized he had been clenching it, probably, for about 2 years. The voice, the one that had been running quietly underneath every interaction since the accident, the one that said "You don't belong here, you're not damaged enough, someone else needs this more," that voice did something he hadn't anticipated. It didn't go quiet. It got loud briefly, the way a fire gets loud when you throw water on it, the way things spike before they extinguish, and Danny felt it move through him like a weather event. And then Harry looked at him, not at the group, at Danny, not with pity, not with the careful therapeutic attention of someone managing a fragile person, with the simple, direct recognition of someone who has been in the room Danny was in and made it out the other side still mostly intact. "You've been quiet," Harry said. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't even really an observation. It was an open door set at ground level, no steps required. Danny opened his mouth. Phase 7, DNMY speaks. One sentence. That's what came out. He'd had others assembled. He'd had the safe version, it's been a process, and the clinical version, the TBI, has affected my executive function and emotional regulation. And the deflecting version, honestly, Robbo's taking up enough air for all of us, which would have gotten a laugh and cost him nothing. What came out was none of those. I keep waiting for someone to tell me I don't belong here, Danny said, and I keep being surprised when they don't. The room was very still. Not the still of discomfort, the still of recognition. 12 people hearing a thing said out loud that they had each been thinking in their own private language and hadn't found the words for. Danny wasn't looking at Harry. He was looking at his hands. His very ordinary hands on his very ordinary thighs in his one good shirt at a table in Sydney on a Tuesday morning in February. I look fine, he said. I know I look fine. I've been told I look fine. A breath. I'm not fine. He stopped. He didn't explain it. He didn't qualify it, didn't soften it, didn't add but I'm getting there or it's been improving or any of the maintenance language he'd spent 2 years using to keep people from worrying. He just let it sit. The room held it. Harry held it. He didn't say thank you for sharing that. He didn't say I'm so sorry or that must be so hard or any of the phrases that are shaped like empathy and feel, to the person receiving them, like being processed. He said, yeah. Just that. Yeah. Like Danny had said something factually accurate, and Harry was confirming the accuracy of it. Like the statement, I'm not fine, was not a crisis requiring management, but a true thing that had been said in a room and been received. Danny exhaled. He hadn't known he was holding that breath. He'd probably been holding it in some form since 2022. Priya's dog Gerald, still on the floor, apparently decided at this precise moment that Danny was his new concern. He didn't get up. He just extended one enormous paw and placed it on Danny's foot with the solemn authority of a dog who had been trained to know what humans needed before humans knew it themselves. Danny looked down at Gerald's paw on his foot. He didn't cry. He was very close. He didn't. He put his hand down and touched the top of Gerald's head, and Gerald accepted this with enormous dignity and didn't move. And Priya caught Danny's eye across the circle and gave him the smallest nod, the kind that means I know, same, you're all right. And Danny nodded back. Nobody named what had happened. Nobody needed to. Phase 8 after. The formal part ended the way these things end, gradually, with the energy of a wave that has reached the shore and is deciding whether to pull back or rest there. Harry stood, moved around the circle, spoke briefly to individuals, not performing the rounds, actually stopping, actually staying for a moment at each person. He got to Robbo first, because Robbo was nearest, and said something quiet that Danny couldn't hear. And Robbo laughed and then didn't laugh and nodded once in the way men nod when they're accepting something they've been refusing for a while. He got to Danny. How far did you drive? He asked. Penrith, 40 minutes give or take. Worth it. Danny thought about this. Thought about she saying that's good, love in the voice that meant please let this be the one. Thought about the clipboard of damage he'd been running in his head since he arrived. Thought about Gerald's paw on his foot. Thought about one sentence, the true one. Sitting in the middle of a circle of chairs, in a room overlooking Sydney Harbor. Yeah, he said, I think so. Harry shook his hand, held it a beat longer than a formal handshake. Not meaningful, no lingering significance performed for the room. Just a man taking a moment to be present for the length of a handshake before moving on. Danny walked out of the room before he said, or did anything that would require him to explain himself. The main event happened. There was adaptive curling on a temporary ice setup that had no business being in a Sydney venue in February, and was there anyway, which Danny found somehow encouraging. There was a demonstration of seated volleyball. There were more speeches, good ones, government ones, the kind that are sincere and also inevitably go 4 minutes longer than they needed to. Danny participated in the curling. He was catastrophically bad at it. He released the stone too early, too hard, at an angle that suggested he'd misunderstood the objective entirely, and it spun wide and came to rest against the barrier in a way that communicated a complete failure of intent. "Terrible," said Robbo, who was beside him. "Thanks, mate." Robbo pointed at him. "That's my word." "Apparently it's everyone's word. Bloke told me himself." Robbo tried to look offended and couldn't manage it. They stood next to each other and watched the next person attempt the stone, and it was bad in an entirely different way, and somehow that was funny and they laughed. Later, after the speeches, after the equipment demonstrations, after the catering trays had been visited and the coffee urn had finally been operated, and Gerald had accepted exactly the amount of petting that was allowed, the group thinned. Danny found himself standing at the window. The harbor was still doing its thing. The coins on the water, the gulls, the ferries moving with their practical indifference to what was happening on shore. The kind of morning that had no interest in your interior condition, except that at some point during it, Danny's interior condition had shifted by some small, unmeasurable amount, the way a key shifts in a lock before it turns. "You all right?" Robbo, beside him, prosthetic leg and all, mug of bad conference coffee in hand, looking at the harbor with him. "Yeah," Danny said. Robbo didn't say good. He didn't say glad to hear it or it gets easier or any of the things people say when they want to close a conversation efficiently. He stood there, drank his coffee, looked at the water. "That thing you said," Robbo said eventually, "in the room." "Yeah. I was going to say something like that." He paused, couldn't. "I know." Another pause. "First day," Robbo said, very quietly. "When I rang my mum," he stopped, started again. "She picked up first ring like she'd been waiting. We hadn't spoken in 4 years and she picked up first ring." He was looking at the harbor, not at Danny. I've never told anyone that. I told him that and I've never told anyone that." Danny didn't say anything useful. He didn't try to. He stood next to Robbo and looked at the harbor, and let the thing Robbo had said occupy the space it needed to occupy without filling it with something smaller. After a while, Robbo straightened up. "Right," he said in the Robbo voice. The performance reassembled but lighter now, fitting differently. "I'm going back for more of that terrible coffee. You want?" "Yeah," Danny said. "Go on." Robbo went. Danny stood at the window a moment longer. He thought about what he was going to say when he got home. Thought about she in the kitchen with her coffee asking how was it. Thought about the 2 years of fines stacked between them like furniture moved to block a hallway, functional seeming, navigated around daily, preventing exactly nothing. He took out his phone. He typed, "Coming home soon. Can we talk properly?" He looked at it. He sent it. She's reply came in 40 seconds. "Yes, I've got biscuits." Danny laughed. It was the kind of laugh that has water in it, just at the edges, just enough to remind you that you're still a person capable of being reached. He laughed and looked at the harbor and thought about a room with 12 chairs and a man who walked in like it was just a room and made it feel, for 2 hours on a Tuesday morning in February, like the first room Danny Kowalski had ever sat in where the chair was exactly the right size. He had driven 40 minutes. He had sat in the back where he could see the door. He had audited everyone else's damage and found himself deficient. He had said one true sentence in a circle of chairs overlooking Sydney Harbor, and a dog had put his paw on his foot, and a man with no agenda had said yeah like it was simply accurate, and Robbo had called a prince mate 3 times in a row by accident, and none of this had fixed anything. His brain was still injured. The word fog still came. The fuse was still shorter than it used to be. The sleep was still irregular and the mornings were still hard, and the voice, the one that said you don't belong here, was still there, still quiet, still waiting. But he'd said the true sentence, out loud in a room where it had been received. That was the whole thing, Danny thought, walking back to find Robbo and the terrible coffee. That was the actual thing nobody tells you about recovery. It isn't a moment where you get better. It's a morning where you stop pretending you're fine and find out the world doesn't end when you do. He found Robbo at the urn. "Still here," Robbo said, handing him a cup. Danny looked at the tattoo on Robbo's forearm. "Still here." "Still here," Danny said. They drank their terrible coffee. Outside, Sydney Harbor went on being Sydney Harbor, indifferent and brilliant and entirely unbothered by what had just quietly, irrevocably happened in the room behind them.